The ship floated in the darkness of space like a silver fish in a black ocean. Captain Daniel Cole stood near the large window of the Starward Hope, watching the stars that seemed to go on forever. He was a tall man with gray hair at his temples and eyes that had seen too many hard things in his 52 years of life. Behind him, the soft hum of machines filled the air as his crew worked at their stations. Lieutenant Maria Santos walked up beside him, her boots making soft sounds on the metal floor. She held a tablet in her hands and her face showed worry. "We are getting a signal, Captain. The alien ship wants to talk." Daniel nodded slowly. He had been waiting for this moment for 3 days. When humanity first sent messages into space, they hoped to find friends among the stars. What they found instead was the Empire, a group of alien conquerors who had taken over 12 star systems and made slaves of every species they met. The alien ship was huge, at least 10 times bigger than the Starward Hope. It was shaped like a curved blade, with red lights running along its sides. Daniel had read the reports about the. They were warriors who believed that strength was the only thing that mattered. They had never met a species that did not bow down to them. "Open a channel," Daniel said calmly. Maria pressed some buttons, and suddenly the screen in front of them came to life. The face that appeared was terrifying. Gray skin stretched over a skull that seemed too large. 4 eyes, each one yellow like a dying sun, stared at them. The creature had a mouth full of teeth that looked like broken glass. "I am," the alien said, his voice deep and rough like rocks grinding together, "commander of the hunting fleet. You will prepare your ship for boarding. Resistance will result in death." Daniel looked at Maria. She was scared, he could see it, but she stood her ground. That was why he had chosen her for this mission. She was brave even when she was afraid. "Understood," Daniel replied. "We will meet you at the main airlock." He turned off the screen and looked at his crew. There were 23 people on this ship. Scientists, engineers, soldiers, doctors. Each one had left behind family and friends on Earth to explore the unknown. Now the unknown had found them, and it was not friendly. "Everyone listen carefully," Daniel said, his voice carrying across the bridge. "We are about to meet the. They think we are weak. They think we will surrender. Show them nothing but calm. Do not fight unless I give the order. But do not show fear either." Ensign Peter Grant, a young man of only 24 with short brown hair and nervous hands, stepped forward. "Captain, what if they try to hurt us?" Daniel looked at the young man. Peter reminded him of himself many years ago, fresh out of training and full of questions. "Then we will show them what humans are made of, but not before. Understand?" Peter nodded, though his face was pale. The walk to the airlock felt like the longest journey of Daniel's life. Each step echoed in the narrow hallway. Behind him walked Maria, Peter, and 4 security officers. They carried no weapons. Daniel had ordered them to leave their guns behind. He knew that showing weapons would only make them see them as a threat to be crushed. The airlock door hissed open, and cold air rushed in. Standing in the doorway was, even more terrifying in person than on the screen. He stood nearly 8 feet tall, with 4 arms that bulged with muscle. Behind him were 6 guards, each one carrying a plasma rifle that glowed with deadly energy. Stepped onto the human ship and looked around with obvious disgust. His 4 eyes moved slowly, taking in the simple walls, the basic technology, the small humans who barely reached his chest. "This is your vessel?" he asked, his voice filled with contempt. "It is like a child's toy." Daniel stepped forward, keeping his hands visible at his sides. "Welcome aboard the Starward Hope, Commander. I am Captain Daniel Cole. How can we help you?" Laughed, a horrible sound like metal scraping against metal. "Help me. You can help me by kneeling. Your species belongs to the Empire now. Your worlds will be mined for resources. Your people will serve us as workers and soldiers. This is not a request. This is your new reality." Maria's hands tightened on her tablet. Peter took a small step backward. The security officers tensed. their hands moving toward hips where weapons should have been but were not. Daniel did not move, he did not blink, he simply said no. The word hung in the air like smoke. 4 eyes narrowed. For a moment he seemed confused, as if he had heard a sound that made no sense. No, he repeated. No, Daniel said again, we will not kneel, we will not surrender our worlds, and we will not serve your empire. The guards raised their rifles. The glowing ends pointed directly at Daniel's chest. One shot from any of those weapons would burn a hole through him large enough to put a fist through. Moved faster than Daniel expected. One massive gray hand shot out and grabbed Peter Grant by the throat. The young ensign's feet left the ground as the alien lifted him like he weighed nothing at all. Peter's face began to turn red, then purple. His hands clawed uselessly at the iron grip around his neck. Maria screamed. The security officers lunged forward but stopped when the guards aimed their rifles at them. Brought his face close to Daniel's. His breath smelled like burning metal. I will kill your man if you don't kneel, the alien warrior bellowed, his voice shaking the walls of the corridor. Daniel looked at Peter, at his young face twisted in pain and fear. He looked at the massive alien who held his crewman's life in one hand. He looked at the guards with their weapons ready to fire. And then Captain Daniel Cole did something that had never seen in all his years of conquest. Something that confused the alien warrior more than any weapon or strategy could have. The human just smiled. It was not a smile of surrender. It was not a smile of fear. It was the smile of a man who had been waiting for this moment, who had known it would come, and who was ready for whatever happened next. What he could not understand, was that humans were not like the other species that had conquered. They did not freeze when threatened. They did not break when pushed. They had spent 200,000 years surviving ice ages, plagues, wars, and disasters that should have wiped them out. They had climbed out of the darkness again and again, each time stronger than before. And they never, ever gave up. The smile on Daniel Cole's face seemed to freeze time itself. His grip on Peter's throat loosened just a little, not enough to let the young man breathe easily, but enough to show that the alien was confused. In all his years of war and conquest, he had never seen a creature smile when death stood so close. You find this funny, human, growled, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. Your man is dying in my hand and you smile. Daniel took a slow breath. His heart was beating fast, but his face stayed calm. He had learned long ago that fear was like fire. You could let it burn you or you could use it to keep warm. Right now, he chose to use it. I smile because you think you understand us, Daniel said, his voice steady and clear. You have conquered 17 species. You have built an empire across 12 systems, but you have never met anything like humanity, and you have no idea what you are dealing with. His 4 eyes blinked one after another. The guards behind him shifted their weight, their rifles still pointed at the humans, but their confidence starting to crack. They had seen many species beg for mercy. They had seen some species try to fight and die quickly. But they had never seen a species stand calmly in the face of certain death and lecture their conqueror. Tell me then, said, a hint of curiosity mixing with his anger, what makes your species so special? You are small. You are weak. Your bones would break like dry sticks in my hands. Daniel nodded slowly. You are right. We are small compared to you. We are physically weaker. But let me tell you a story, Commander. Let me tell you about my people. He took a step forward, moving closer to despite the danger. Maria Santos wanted to grab him and pull him back, but she knew better. She had served under Daniel for 5 years. She knew that he always had a plan, even when it looked like madness. 200,000 years ago, Daniel began, my ancestors lived in a place called Africa. They had no claws, no fangs, no armor on their skin. They were surrounded by predators that were faster, stronger, and deadlier than they were. By all logic, they should have been eaten. They should have died out and been forgotten. grip on Peter loosened a little more. The young ensign gasped for air but stayed silent, his eyes fixed on his captain. But they did not die, Daniel continued. Do you know why? Because they were stubborn. When a lion chased them, they did not give up. They ran until the lion got tired. They invented fire to keep the darkness away. They made spears from sticks and stones. They looked at every challenge and said, "We will survive this." The commander tilted his massive head. This is supposed to impress me. You survived some animals. We have destroyed civilizations. Daniel's smile grew wider. I am not finished. Those same ancestors walked out of Africa and spread across the entire planet. They crossed frozen mountains with nothing but animal skins to keep them warm. They sailed across oceans in boats made of wood, not knowing if they would ever see land again. When the ice ages came and covered the world in snow, they did not surrender. They built shelters, hunted mammoths, and waited for the cold to pass. Behind Daniel, Maria was quietly working on her tablet. She had sent an emergency message to Earth the moment they boarded the ship. Help would come, but it would take time. Right now, Daniel's voice was the only weapon they had. We are a species of survivors, Daniel said, his voice rising with passion. We have survived plagues that killed half our population. We have survived wars that burned our cities to ash. We have survived floods, earthquakes, fires, and famines. And every single time, we came back stronger than before. Finally released Peter completely. The young ensign fell to his knees, coughing and gasping, but alive. Maria rushed forward to help him while Daniel kept talking, kept holding the alien's attention. Do you want to know what really makes humans different? Daniel asked. It is not our strength. It is not our technology. It is the fire that burns inside us. We call it hope. We call it determination. We call it the refusal to quit no matter how bad things get. He pointed at his crew, at Maria helping Peter to his feet, at the security officers who still stood ready despite having no weapons. Every person on this ship has that fire, Daniel said. Every human who has ever lived has carried that flame. You can threaten us. You can hurt us. You can even kill us. But you cannot make us kneel, because kneeling would mean giving up, and we do not know how to do that. Was silent for a long moment. His 4 eyes studied Daniel with new interest, like a hunter who had just realized that his prey might actually be another predator in disguise. In the engine room of the Starboard Hope, Chief Engineer Samuel Price was listening to everything through the ship's internal communication system. He was a big man with thick arms and a beard that had more gray in it than black. He had served 20 years in the Earth Navy before joining the space program. He had seen combat, had lost friends, had carried wounded soldiers through enemy fire. Now he was quietly rerouting power to the ship's emergency systems. If things went bad, he would be ready to seal the doors, vent the atmosphere, do whatever it took to give his a chance. That was the human way. You did not give up. You fought until your last breath, and then you fought some more. Back in the corridor, finally spoke again. His voice was different now, less angry and more thoughtful. You are either very brave or very foolish, human, he said. Daniel shrugged. Probably both. But that is also very human. We do foolish things for the people we care about. We take risks that make no sense because our hearts tell us to, and sometimes, just sometimes, that foolishness changes the course of history. Peter Grant had recovered enough to stand on his own. His throat was bruised and his voice was rough, but he moved to stand beside his captain. One by one, the other humans did the same. Maria Santos, the 4 security officers. They formed a line beside Daniel, facing them with quiet courage. You see, Daniel said softly, this is who we are. We stand together always. Stared at the line of humans standing before him. His guards had lowered their rifles slightly, not because they had been ordered to, but because they did not know what to do. This situation was not in their training. Conquered species were supposed to beg, to cry, to offer anything in exchange for their lives. They were not supposed to stand in a line like soldiers ready for battle when they had no weapons and no chance of winning. The alien commander's four eyes moved slowly from face to face. He saw the young ensign whose throat still bore the marks of his grip, standing tall despite the pain. He saw the female officer with the tablet, her fingers still moving across its surface even as she faced death. He saw the security officers, their hands empty but their eyes full of dangerous promise. And he saw the captain, this strange Daniel Cole, who smiled at death like an old friend. "You truly believe you can defy the Empire?" asked, genuine curiosity in his voice now. "We have ships that can crack planets open. We have warriors who have trained for battle since birth. We have conquered species that were far more advanced than yours." Daniel nodded calmly. "I have no doubt that you are powerful. I have no doubt that you could destroy this ship with a single shot from your weapons. But that is not the point." "Then what is the point?" demanded. "The point is that you would have to do it," Daniel replied. "You would have to kill us because we will never surrender. And then you would have to go to Earth and kill 8 billion more of us. And every single one of them would fight you. The children would throw rocks. The elderly would swing sticks. The wounded would crawl toward you with their last breath. Because that is what we do." From the medical bay, Dr. Foster had been watching through the security cameras. She was a small woman with kind eyes and gentle hands, but those hands had performed surgery in war zones while bombs fell outside. She had held dying soldiers and told them everything would be okay, even when she knew it would not. Now she gathered medical supplies and moved toward the corridor, ready to help whoever needed it. Maria Santos finally looked up from her tablet. "Captain," she said quietly, "the message has been sent. Earth knows our situation." Daniel did not react visibly, but inside he felt a small wave of relief. Help was coming. All they had to do was survive long enough for it to arrive. The problem was that long enough could mean hours, and they might only have minutes. "What message?" asked, his eyes narrowing. "What have you done?" Daniel saw no reason to lie. "I have told my people that we have met the Empire. I have told them that you demanded our surrender. And I have told them that we refused." His massive body went still. In his experience, conquered species tried to hide their distress signals. They tried to be clever and sneaky. This human had just admitted openly that he had called for help, as if he had done nothing wrong. "You think your primitive fleet can challenge the commander asked, his voice rising. "We have crushed armadas that stretched across star systems." "Maybe," Daniel said with a shrug, "or maybe not. But here is something you should understand about humans. We never build just enough. We always prepare for things to go wrong. We expect the worst and plan for it. So while you have been conquering species that gave up easily, we have been building ships and weapons for an enemy we hoped we would never meet." This was partly a bluff, and Daniel knew it. Earth's space fleet was still young, still growing. But it was not helpless. Humans had spent their entire history fighting each other, which meant they had become very good at building weapons. When they finally turned their eyes to the stars, they had not forgotten those lessons. Peter Grant stepped forward suddenly. His voice was rough and painful, but his words were clear. "Can I say something, Captain?" Daniel nodded, curious to see what the young ensign would do. Peter looked up at this massive alien who had nearly killed him with one hand. "My grandfather fought in a war on Earth," he said. "He was in a place called Normandy. His friends died all around him. He was shot twice, but he kept moving forward. Do you know why?" Did not answer, but his attention was fully on the young human. "Because he knew that if he stopped, if he gave up, then all those deaths would mean nothing," Peter continued. "He told me that story every year on the anniversary of that battle. He told me that humans are not brave because they are not afraid. Humans are brave because they are terrified and they keep going anyway." Dr. Foster arrived in the corridor, her medical bag in her hands. She quietly moved to check on Peter's throat, her skilled fingers gently examining the damage. The young man winced but did not pull away. watched this with fascination. On ships, the wounded were left to recover on their own or die. Resources were not wasted on those too weak to heal themselves. But these humans rushed to help their injured, even in the middle of a confrontation with a superior enemy. You waste energy on the weak, observed. It will be your downfall. Daniel shook his head. No, Commander, it is our greatest strength. We do not leave anyone behind. We do not abandon our wounded or our scared or our struggling. We carry each other. That is what makes us strong. The guards were whispering among themselves now. They had heard stories of strange species in distant parts of the galaxy, species that worked together in ways they did not understand. But they had never seen it so clearly demonstrated. Captain Maria said quietly, "Sensors are detecting movement from the ship. They are charging weapons." Daniel felt his heart drop, but his face stayed calm. Eyes flickered to his subordinate, who was receiving the same information through a device on his wrist. "Your ship is preparing to destroy us," Daniel said simply. "Is that your decision, Commander? To kill 23 people who have done nothing but refuse to become slaves?" Was quiet for a long moment. The tension in the corridor was thick enough to cut with a knife. Everyone waited, humans and alike, for what would happen next. Then slowly raised his hand and spoke into a communicator on his wrist. "Hold position. Do not fire." The whispers among the guards stopped. Something had changed in their commander, something they did not fully understand. Looked at Daniel with new eyes. "You are different," he said finally. "Your species is different. I need to think about what this means." For the first time since the aliens had boarded, Daniel allowed himself to hope that they might actually survive this day. The corridor of the Starboard Hope fell silent after ordered his ship to hold fire. The guards looked at their commander with confusion written on their alien faces. This was not how conquest worked. This was not how the Empire had built its power across 12 star systems. Daniel Cole felt the tension ease slightly, but he knew they were not safe yet. A predator that hesitated was still a predator. He kept his eyes on, watching for any sign of what the alien commander would do next. "You have questions," Daniel said quietly. "Ask them." Studied the human for a long moment. Then he did something unexpected. He gestured for his guards to step back and lowered himself to sit on a storage container, bringing his eyes closer to the human's level. It was still not an equal position, as he was still taller than them even while sitting, but it was a clear signal that he wanted to talk, not fight. 3,000 years ago began, his voice thoughtful and heavy with memory, the Empire encountered a species called the... They were small like you, physically weak like you. We expected them to submit immediately. Maria Santos was recording everything, her tablet capturing both the alien's words and his expressions. This was history being made, and she knew it. Whatever happened next, humanity would need to understand the... "What happened?" Daniel asked, genuinely curious. "They fought us," said. His 4 eyes seemed to look into the distance, seeing something that had happened long before any human had been born. They were not strong enough to defeat our warriors in battle. They were not advanced enough to match our ships, but they refused to surrender. Peter Grant listened intently, one hand still touching his bruised throat. He could feel each word that came from the alien commander, feel the weight of a history he had never known existed. "We chased them across their system," continued. "Every time we destroyed one of their ships, 2 more appeared. Every time we conquered one of their moons, they would blow it up themselves rather than let us keep it. They poisoned their own water, burned their own food, turned their own children into soldiers." Dr. Foster felt a chill run down her spine. She understood what was describing. Humans had done similar things throughout their history when faced with invaders. Scorched earth tactics, they called it. If you could not keep something from your enemy, you destroyed it so they could not have it either. "The war lasted 200 years, said. We threw everything we had at them. We killed millions of their kind. We destroyed their cities, their farms, their factories. And in the end, when we finally reached there, do you know what we found? Daniel shook his head slowly. Nothing, said, and there was something almost like respect in his voice. Empty buildings, silent streets. They had evacuated their entire population to colony ships and scattered to the far reaches of the galaxy. We inherited an empty planet and a lesson we have never forgotten. And what lesson was that? Maria asked, her voice barely above a whisper. His eyes focused on her, that some species cannot be conquered, they can only be destroyed, and destroying them costs more than keeping them. They are still out there, somewhere in the darkness between stars. They are rebuilding, and one day they will come back. The alien commander stood up again, his massive frame filling the corridor. He looked at Daniel with an expression that had changed completely from when he first boarded the ship. You remind me of them, said. Your words, your actions, your willingness to die rather than kneel. They have conquered 17 species since all of them submitted. All of them became part of our empire without a fight. But you. He paused, as if struggling to find the right words. You are the first in 3,000 years who have looked at me like the did, finished. Like you see something I cannot see. Like you know something I do not know. Daniel took a careful step forward. We know that freedom is worth dying for. We know that some things matter more than survival. And we know that the universe is vast enough for all species to live without masters or slaves. Samuel Price's voice came through the ship's speakers suddenly. Captain, we have incoming vessels on long-range sensors. They are coming from the direction of Earth. Everyone in the corridor tensed. Guards raised their weapons again, and for a moment it seemed like all the progress they had made would be lost. But Daniel held up his hand calmly. Those are our ships, Commander. They are coming because we called for help. What happens next is up to you. Considered this. He could order his ship to fire to destroy the Starward Hope before the human fleet arrived. He could try to fight them all and probably win, given the superior technology. But something had changed in the last hour. Something had shifted inside him. How many ships? He asked. Samuel's voice answered. Looks like 12, Commander. A mix of cruisers and destroyers, and they are coming in fast. 12 ships against 1 cruiser. The numbers were not in humanity's favor, but that did not matter. They were coming anyway. They were risking everything to save 23 people on a small exploration vessel. Understood something in that moment. The empire was built on fear. They conquered because other species were afraid to resist. But these humans were not afraid. They were determined. And determination, he knew from was far more dangerous than fear. I will return to my ship, said finally. I will tell the High Council what I have seen here today. What they decide to do with this information is beyond my control, but I will tell them the truth. And what is the truth? Daniel asked. The alien commander moved toward the airlock, his guards following close behind. At the doorway, he paused and looked back. The truth is that we have found another species like this, said. A species that does not know how to surrender. And if the High Council is wise, they will choose to negotiate rather than conquer. Because I have lived through one endless war, and I do not wish to see another. He stepped through the airlock, and the door sealed behind him. 6 months had passed since the encounter on the Starward Hope. The universe had changed in ways that no one could have predicted. Daniel Cole stood at a window in the United Earth Council building, looking up at the night sky. Somewhere out there, the Empire was having conversations about humanity that would shape the future of both species. The door behind him opened, and Maria Santos walked in. She wore a new uniform now, the silver stripes on her shoulders marking her promotion to commander and head of the division. Her work translating language and culture had become the most important research project on Earth. The Council is ready for you, Captain, she said with a warm smile. Daniel turned and nodded. He was still not used to being called a hero. In his mind, he had just done what any human would do. He had refused to give up. But the world saw it differently. Schools taught the story of the Starward Hope. Children played games where they pretended to be Captain Cole facing down the alien invaders. His face was on magazine covers and history books. He walked into the council chamber, where dozens of representatives from every nation on Earth sat waiting. At the center of the room was a large screen showing a live feed from space. The image showed something that would have been impossible just a year ago, a diplomatic vessel orbiting Earth peacefully. Captain Cole, the council president said, "Please give us your report on the current state of human relations." Daniel stepped up to the podium. He thought about all the people who had made this moment possible. Peter Grant, who had stood beside him with a bruised throat and fire in his eyes. Samuel Price, who had been ready to sacrifice the ship to give them a fighting chance. Foster, who had healed wounds both physical and emotional in the difficult months that followed. 6 months ago, Daniel began, we faced a choice. We could have surrendered to thee and become another conquered species in their empire. Instead, we chose to stand. We chose to show them what humanity really means. The chamber was silent, every eye fixed on him. Commander returned to his people and told them the truth about our encounter. Daniel continued. He told them about our history, our determination, our refusal to kneel. And he reminded them of a species they had spent 200 years fighting without ever truly defeating. Maria had told him about through her translation work she had pieced together the full story of that ancient war. They had lost there, but they had never lost their spirit. They were still out there, scattered across the galaxy, slowly rebuilding their civilization. And when they heard about humanity's stand against they had sent a message. You are not alone. The High Council debated for 3 months, Daniel said. Some wanted to crush us immediately before we could become a threat. Others remembered thee and did not want another endless war. In the end, they chose a third option, negotiation. He pressed a button, and the screen changed to show a document covered in both human writing and symbols. This is the Treaty of First Contact, Daniel explained. It is the first agreement between humanity and an alien civilization. Under its terms, they recognize us as an independent species. They have agreed to open trade and cultural exchange, and they have promised not to attempt conquest of human worlds. The chamber erupted in applause, but Daniel held up his hand for silence. But this is only the beginning, he said firmly. They respect us now because we showed them strength. If we become weak, if we forget what made us stand tall on the Starward Hope, they will see us as prey again. We must never forget who we are. In the months since the encounter, many things had changed. Peter Grant had written an account of what happened that day, a simple and honest story that became required reading in schools around the world. He had titled it We Stand Together, and it reminded people of the moment when 23 humans faced an alien empire and did not back down. Samuel Price had returned to space aboard a new ship, the Defiant. He sent regular reports about the wonders they discovered, new planets, new stars, new mysteries waiting to be solved. The universe was bigger than anyone had imagined, and humanity was finally starting to explore it properly. Dr. Foster had done something remarkable. She had proposed an exchange program where human doctors would treat patients and healers would study human medicine. The idea seemed crazy at first, but had supported it. The first patient arrived on Earth 3 weeks ago, a young warrior injured in a training accident. Had saved his life, and the story of a human healing an alien had touched hearts across both civilizations. As for Daniel himself, he had plans of his own. After his report to the council, he would retire from active service. He had a small cabin waiting for him in the mountains of Montana, where he could fish and read and enjoy the peace that they had fought so hard to protect. But before he left, there was one more thing he wanted to say. I want to share something I have learned in the past 6 months, Daniel said, his voice softening. They are not evil. They are not monsters. They are a species that grew up believing that strength was the only thing that mattered. They conquered because they thought it was the only way to survive. He paused, choosing his words carefully. We showed them another way. We showed them that courage is not about being the biggest or the strongest. It is about standing up for what you believe in, even when you are afraid. It is about caring for each other, even when it costs you. It is about hopping for a better future, even when the present is dark. The screen behind him changed one final time. It showed the starward Hope, now repaired and fitted with new equipment, preparing for its next mission. This is what humanity offers the universe, Daniel said. Not weapons or threats or demands for submission. We offer partnership. We offer friendship. We offer the chance to build something better together. He looked around the chamber at the faces of people from every nation on Earth. 200,000 years ago, our ancestors looked up at the stars and wondered what was out there. Now we know, and we have proven that we belong among those stars, not as slaves or conquerors, but as equals. Daniel Cole smiled, the same smile he had given in the corridor of his ship, the smile that had changed history. We stood together that day, he said softly. We will stand together tomorrow. And no matter what challenges the universe sends our way, we will never, ever kneel. The chamber rose in a standing ovation that lasted for 5 full minutes, but Daniel barely heard it. He was thinking about the future, about all the adventures still waiting among the stars, about a humanity that had finally found its place in the cosmos. The universe was vast and full of danger, but it was also full of hope, and humanity, stubborn and brave and impossibly determined, was ready for whatever came next.